It's a pleasure to me moderate this session today with an excellent speakers, and the topic of this webinars today is Quality Assurance Agency's perspective of hybrid and e-learning courses provision. We have these four speakers today with us. The first one will be Ana Prades from the International Network for Quality Assurance Agencies in Higher Education. The second, Anna Robert from ENQA, the European Association for Quality Assurance in Higher Education. And later we have Eamon Costello, Dublin City University, but who is also working and participating in different activities with the Irish Quality Assurance Agency. And Albert Bassar from MACU, which is the Catalan System Quality Agency. The idea and the focus of this webinar today is, of course, related to the quality assurance, but in that case, we are interested in to know the guidelines for hybrid and virtual programs in higher education. And these guidelines made by usually for these quality assurance agencies. And we would like to note the experiences, the proposals, and also the activities that these different quality assurance agencies and associations are participating today in this webinar. We will have the opportunity to hear a short presentations for each one of the speakers today. And at the end of this first part of this webinar, we will have the opportunity for questions and answers. And please, if you have some comments, questions to the panelists, please use the chat or also the questions and answers application here in the Zoom. Of course, as usual, this webinar, when we finish the webinar, in some hours later, this webinar will be uploaded to the EDEN website, and you will have the opportunity to have also there the presentations of each one of our speakers today. I would like to share with you short information related to the other activities that we are organizing as EDEN. Probably you know that this a very important activity, which is organized by European Digital Education Hub from the European Commission, and we are participating also there. I recommend to register in this European Digital Education Hub. You have here the hub registration link, and also for this new event in November 28th about the digital innovations and transformation through research, practice, and policy perspective. And of course, we would like to announce our next annual conference in Dublin, in Ireland, in next June, next year, 2023, from 18 to 20. Please save the date and join us in this very interesting event. And now it's time to start with our speakers. Let me introduce the first one, which is Ana Prades. She's member of the Board of Directors of the International Network for Quality Assurance in Higher Education. And also she was involved in the development of international standards and guidelines of this organization. She's also a head of internationalization and knowledge generation department at the ACU Catalonia, and she has a degree in psychology and a PhD in pedagogy. Please, Ana, go ahead.
Greetings from Barcelona, and thank you for inviting INQAAHE. I'm going to share now my screen. Okay. That's it. Okay, first thing I have to tell you is that INQAAHE is an international network of quality assurance agencies, and as such, we do not have standards to assess the quality assurance of online learning programs. What we do have, and what I'm going to share with you, is the standards for guiding and assessing external quality assurance bodies that do accredit online and blended learning programs, okay? And that's what I'm going to share with you. So let me do a very, very brief presentation of what is this international network of quality assurance. ENQAAHE was established in 1991 in Hong Kong with the objective of enhancing the quality assurance provision in higher education. And the central concept of the founders was the capacity building and information sharing among these external quality assurance bodies. So our mission is to promote and advance excellence in tertiary education through the support of an active international community of quality assurance. We have this here, you can see our values. Two of our core values are inclusiveness and diversity, and they go hand to hand, because you have to think that in order to be a member of ENQAAHE, you don't need to be externally assessed yourself. And that means that we have a huge variety of maturity levels of our external quality assurance providers. Here you can see who we are. And the 60% of our members are full members, which for us means that they carry out external quality assurance assessments, not that they are that they are external assessed themselves. And globally, there are around 345 quality assurance bodies. 60% of them are members of a regional or an international network. One point that I would like to make here is that there are only two systems that have established this external quality assurance of external quality assurance providers, which is the United States, which is carried out by the Department of Education or by the QAA, which is the Council of Higher Education Accreditation, and Europe through ENQA and the European Standards and Guidelines. The rest of the world does not have such a strong encouragement to be assessed themselves. Okay, internationalization is, of course, in our DNA, and we do events around the world. The last one was in Mexico, and next one is in Kazakhstan. And I encourage you to go to the Kazakhstan meeting, since we have a call for papers, which is open now on quality assurance of e-learning provision. Let's go to these international standards and guidelines. What are they? I have to tell you, this is a major spoiler because we are presenting them at the end of the month. Okay, let's tell you a little bit about what they are. They are born from a very, very simple idea that was born at the end of the 90s, which is that evaluators should be evaluated themselves. Okay, and this idea was generated the first publication of the Guides of Good Practice in 2003 in a conference in Dublin. And they have been reviewed in 2006 and in 2016. And right now, the evolution is these international standards and guidelines. As I told you, and this is the second promotional wedge, right? These standards and guidelines are going to be presented at the end of this month. The main idea, the main novelty that I'm going to share with you is that they are modular, okay? So they come from this idea that one size fits all does not fit the diversity of external quality assurance bodies that we do have in ENQAAHE. So we needed this modular approach. And one of these modular approach is for those accreditors or quality assurance agencies that assess online or blended programs, okay? Which is an optional module. So now what I'm going to present you here, what you can see is the structure of these standards. The first one is mandatory. It's for all of them, including for quality assurance agencies that assess distance education providers. And it covers those aspects that make external quality assurance bodies to be trusted, to be relevant, and to be efficient. And so in here, you can see things about its legitimacy, independency, consistency in evaluations, accountability, and so on, okay? And this is mandatory, okay, for all of them. And then we have these three optional modules. One of them is for external quality assurance bodies that carry out cross-border quality assurance or that assess transnational education, okay? Another one, the second one, is for those quality assurance providers that accredit short learning programs or micro-credentials. And the third one, that is the one that we are going to comment today, is for quality assurance providers that accredit online and blended higher education provisions. But you have to take into account that these are kind of extra standards that most of them are covered in this mandatory module. Okay, so it's just the standards that can be used also for guidelines for those of us that are not interested in obtaining this module, but we would like to know what we consider a good practice if we are going to accredit online and or blended higher education provisions. So let's have a look at them, and this is the final slide. We have 3 blocks of standards: the mandate, policies and procedures, and relevance. So the first criteria is, as always, coherence and consistency, right? If we look at the mandate, what we would ask for these external quality assurance providers is that the mandate must be clear and it must include distance education in its mandate, okay? It should be there. And then this second one, that is that the external quality assurance provider should ensure that it has relevant expertise, both in its staff and in the external evaluators that are used in the assessments, okay? The idea that it's here is that the staff and the external experts, of course, should be able to determine whether the stated learning outcomes might be achieved through online or blended learning. Okay. And this is an idea that our president, Debader, always tries to convey in her speeches, is that to be able to we must first be students of, say it, distance education, online blended programs, flexible learning provision, whatever, before we are stewards of that questions in our tertiary education system. Okay, regarding policies and procedures, they must be relevant. There must be a clear definition, whatever it is, about what it is distance education, so that tertiary education providers are able to affirm that distance education is appropriate for the delivery of the curriculum. And of course, the policies regarding authorization, what is required for initial authorization, must be transparent and public, okay? Then comes from my point of view, the most interesting standards that are related to equivalency, and they are more focused to outcomes of the learning provisions. External quality assurance bodies must have standards that ensure that tertiary education providers, that would be higher education for us, okay, do provide equivalent learning experiences, okay? And in order to do so, there must be consistency in the tertiary education provider's mission. The system must be overseen by an individual qualified to supervise and monitor education quality in a distance education course or program. And tertiary education providers, of course, they have financial resources, staffing and expertise, technology infrastructure, data security, relevant student identity authentication tools, and adequate policies for academic integrity, and so on, okay? Apart from clear and appropriate communication, appropriately preparing and supporting faculty and students, and tertiary education providers must demonstrate this equivalency in learning resources and outcomes between on-campus and distant education systems, okay? And of course, recognition of the conferred qualification nationally or internationally should be considered in the policies and procedures. And lastly, regarding to quality, the external quality assurance providers should require tertiary education providers to periodically review their standards and report on course and program outcomes of distance education programs. And with this, I finish my presentation. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much. And please, I remember to all of the attendants that you can use the chat on the questions and answers part of the Zoom if you have questions or comments related to the presentations. Now we can move to our second presenter today, which is Anna Gober. She's director of the European Association for Quality Assurance in Higher Education, ENQA. In the role, Anna worked in the ENQA Secretariat and also is organizing different events, etc., related with ENQA. Anna is there almost 10 years with almost 10 years of experience working in quality assurance of higher education. And also previously she worked on the European University Association. That means we have a person with a strong experience related to the field of the quality in Europe. Anna, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. So I share my screen and I hope that's fine. If I can get a thumbs up from somebody that okay, lovely, thank you. Yes, so my name's Anna Gober. I'm the director of ENQA. I've been the director of ENQA actually for only about 6 months, but as Josip said, I have many more years of that of experience in quality assurance. What I'm going to do today is just talk a little bit through some of the work that ENQA has previously done on quality assurance of digital education. So very briefly, just to start, ENQA is an association of quality assurance agencies in the European higher education area. We have at the moment 55 members, and those members are agencies that have been reviewed against the European standards and guidelines. So as Anna already said, Europe is one of the regions in the world that that has a system for checking the checkers, as it were. So agencies are reviewed. ENQA conducts most of the reviews of these agencies, and agencies that have a successful review against the European standards and guidelines can become a member of ENQA. And as part of our work, what we do is organize a lot of activities, peer learning and sharing activities with our members to address some kind of hot topics and issues that they're grappling with at the time. And one of those issues several years ago was indeed the quality assurance of e-learning. Now, before I dive into that, I think it's important to note that we have in the European higher education area the European standards and guidelines, and two important principles that are mentioned in the introduction for the European standards and guidelines is that these ESG, they apply to all forms of education, regardless of the place or mode of study or delivery. And what that means is that we consider that the ESG do apply to online and distance learning. The other important principle that I will mention here and come back to later is that higher education institutions are the ones that have the primary responsibility for the quality and the quality assurance of their education provision. The role of the agencies is to check that institutions have in place policies and practices to do that. So as I said, we consider that the ESG do apply to the quality assurance of e-learning. However, there's always a but, and the but is that there was a recognition amongst ENQA's members that some additional guidance was needed to support institutions and agencies in delivering online education. And so in 2015, ENQA put together a working group. It involved 10 agencies from amongst our memberships, from amongst our members. And actually, I'm glad we've got two people here from ECU Catalonia, because it was indeed the Catalonian agency that led this work. Many of you will know Esther Huertas, and she chaired the group. So much of what I say today is really presenting the work that she and her colleagues did. And what this group did was that they came up with a report which provided some additional considerations for internal and external QA, building on what's already there in the ESG. Now, as I say, this was back in 2018. Little did we know at the time quite what an important resource this would become. When we published the report, it was nice, there was some interest, but in spring 2020, of course, there was a sudden resurgence in interest in this report, and I know that the colleagues that were involved in working on it were very much in demand to present it and talk a bit more in detail about what came up with. So just to go through, highlight some of the key points from the report. As I said, it's based on the ESG, so it goes through standard by standard and highlights some of the areas that are specifically challenging for e-learning and provides some additional consideration and indicators. The first part of the ESG focuses on internal quality assurance. And some of the specific aspects of internal quality assurance that are challenging for e-learning. On the first hand, that's around the policy for quality assurance. It's important that there's a strategic approach to e-learning and the quality assurance of e-learning, and how that is integrated in terms of the institution's strategic development and how the programs are put together. I think here we draw a really important distinction between the emergency online learning and teaching that we saw in the first phase of the pandemic versus a strategic decision of a higher education institution to develop its provision of online education. So it's an investment from the institution and not an ad hoc action. I won't go through all of these in detail, but just to pick out a couple of issues. What we've seen is, but both from our agencies that are looking into QA of e-learning and what they're hearing from their institutions, assessment and assessment methods and assessment security are one of the really big issues that come up. And this has moved on even further from the 2018 report, with technological advances in assessment approaches. And this brings along the need for not only the alignment between the assessment method and the teaching method, but also brings up issues around privacy, data protection, and academic integrity issues. Another area of challenge is recognition. In some countries, the legal frameworks are such that programs need to be specifically registered as being online programs in order to be recognized as a degree. Sort of offline programs can deliver a small percentage of their education provision online, but if it's too much, then it's no longer recognized as a degree in some countries. And then I think the other key issues for internal quality assurance are very much around the changing needs and expectations of staff and students in terms of training and support for staff in the delivery of e-learning, but then also for student support. The profile of students that take online courses we see is often very different to those that attend on-site delivery education. And that brings with it different kinds of barriers for access, but also different support needs. But ENQA's real expertise lies in external quality assurance. And so the second part of the report examines some of the key considerations for the external quality assurance of e-learning. The first of these is designing methodologies that are fit for purpose, so that the methodology and the criteria reflect the use of digital education and the variety of modes of delivery. Because the traditional external QA criteria might not properly reflect online programs. And so this might mean that agencies develop specific criteria in indicators and guidelines that they use to review institutions, but also that provide support for institutions that are looking to develop this area of their activity. In terms of implementing external quality assurance, this brings up specific challenges relating to reviewing the material provided by the higher education institution, so that there's a clear explanation of the pedagogical approaches and access to the virtual learning environment. And that the site visit allows the possibility to understand the technological infrastructure and to meet different stakeholders, because students may be at a distance, staff may be at a distance. So this is a different approach to a traditional site visit where you sit down in meetings and talk to the students and the teachers. And the final point is, of course, the peer review experts. It's clear that they need experience in e-learning and need to be trained on the specific criteria and things to look out for during the review process while they're reviewing a program or an institution. Now, as I say, this report was put together in 2018, and of course, an awful lot has happened since then. So what we're doing in ENQA at the moment is we're having a few reflections on what has changed in the interim. Of course, there's a huge amount of increased attention on e-learning and digital education. COVID-19 has played a huge role in that, of course, but even before that, there were quite some ongoing developments in digitally enhanced education. So I think it's important to recognise that this was something that was moving forward at a pace before COVID, but that has obviously accelerated things considerably. There's also a lot of talk. Micro-credentials is kind of the hot topic at the moment. It's impossible to do a presentation or go to an event without mentioning it. I won't go into detail, but obviously not all micro-credentials are delivered online, but a lot of them are. And that means, again, a renewed focus on digital education. And finally, there's a policy focus on this as well. The role of digital education in addressing issues around access to higher education, flexible learning pathways, lifelong learning, all around issues to do with upskilling and reskilling the workforce, which are a policy priority in many areas. We're also seeing evolving terminology, and at ENQA we're moving more towards talking about digital education rather than e-learning or online learning. And I think this reflects a bit the blurring of the boundaries between education delivered purely online and that delivered purely on site. It's no longer one or the other. Campus universities offer online courses, programs are offered in hybrid or blended modes, and digital pedagogies are used to enhance what we would consider to be traditional on-site delivery. Another aspect of this is due to the increased use and visibility of digital education is we are gradually moving towards a parity of esteem between on-site education and digital education, whereas I think previously, and I recognize this varies from culture to culture and country to country, but in some instances we see that programs delivered online were considered somehow to be less qualitative than those that were delivered in person. All of this means that for quality assurance agencies, there needs to be an integration of their digital education criteria into their regular criteria. So agencies, quite some of our members are moving away from having an entirely separate set of criteria that address digital education to having those criteria integrated into their regular quality assurance criteria that can be picked up as needed as the evaluation goes along. And I've mentioned already that some countries are moving towards legal reforms, so to better recognise education that's delivered online. To finish up, I just tell you a little bit about what's coming up soon from ENQA. As I say, we've been having quite some reflections recently and this work's being led by Esther from EQ Catalonia, but also we're working with QAAs, the Quality Assurance Agency from Ireland, because they've also been doing an awful lot of work in this area recently. And we are working on developing a guidance statement on the quality assurance of education. And that would reflect that the report that was produced in 2018, we consider to still be entirely valid, but we do recognise that the context has moved on a little bit since then. And so this guidance statement will provide some further reflections and guidance into how things have changed in the recent years. More generally, I started my presentation by talking about the ESG, the European Standards and Guidelines. We're also at the moment conducting a large-scale project to review the ESG in the context of the broader European quality assurance framework, and reflecting on whether the ESG are still fit for purpose in the changing higher education environment. And it's likely that this will lead to some recommendations for the future development of the ESG, and I'm sure that digital education will feature in that. So that's all from me. Thank you very much for the invitation to speak to you today, and I look forward to answering any questions if there are any at the end.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this interesting presentation. Now we can move to the next two speakers, which are more focused on different countries. In that case, we have the opportunity to have a person from Ireland and later from the Quality Assurance Agency in Catalonia. It's a pleasure to me to introduce you, Professor Eamon Costello. He's an associate professor of digital learning in Dublin City University in Ireland. He's deeply curious about how we learn in different environments, and of course, everything related with distance or digital education. I agree with this proposal. Of course, it's a different kind of environment. And also, I think Professor Eamon Costello is also participating in a different activities with Irish Quality Assurance Agency. Please, Eamon, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Joseph. And thank you for the invitation to speak at today's session, and also for how you have beautifully structured this session, because we had a wonderful talk from Anna Prades about the international, very macro level, and then down to the European level. And I'm going to give some brief reflections from more of the meso or the micro level. I've been fortunate to be involved with QAAHE that Anna Glover just mentioned at the Irish Quality Assurance Body for higher education. And with a team here in Dublin University, we're helping develop new guidelines. So we're part of the contract to develop the new guidelines for Ireland. So I'll give a few reflections about what that's looking like, how that's going, some of the emerging data that is coming through from learners, from teachers, from participants, etc. And I'll talk a little bit about the process and what's happening here, and give you an insight into that. And hopefully this is helpful to the conversation. So there is a consultation for guideline development currently underway, as I mentioned. And this is to develop new statutory quality assurance guidelines for providers of blended and online learning. And the current blended learning framework statutory guidelines is working very well according to the feedback we've gotten so far from participants, and it's very highly valued by participants in the Irish higher education sector. And it's organized in 3 levels around the organizational dimension, the program dimension, and the learner experience. So this is the way we're structuring the conversations in the consultation as we go out to talk to people. And what does that look like? What does this consultation itself look like? Well, let me see. Yeah. Let me see, can I go forward? Okay, here we go. So we're currently having listening sessions with the sector, and making sure their voices is being heard. So we have a survey that we're using to gather their opinions, but we're also conducting fittingly online workshops. So I meant to say actually in the previous slide, we are currently blended guidelines. We're revising those, but we're also developing these entirely new online guidelines. So a brief overview of what the sector looks like. Who are we talking to? It is a mixture of private and public, large and small organizations. We're talking to leaders, learners, teachers, and third space professionals, which so the landscape is very mixed. You have very large providers, big universities, you have much smaller providers, and they can be public or private. Their funding can come from a mixture, also even public so-called. Often most universities nowadays have a lot of private income from various sources. So it's quite complex, but the 3 sessions we've had to date are with these, largely one focus on the private sector, largely one on the public universities, and then another one on what I'm calling here third space professionals or learning technologists, who are a key group of people who have come to the fore during the pandemic, answering the online learning call and really helping out, being a key link between learners and teachers, because teachers can't be experts in technology. So these are kind of a key a key resource, particularly in larger institutions. So why? Partly because we want to get people's opinions and we want to solicit what they want to see in the quality guidelines, but there's also an educative dimension to the consultation itself. So we want to get people to reflect on, during the consultation process, what is quality? What does it look like to you? What do you want to get out of this? It's not just a checkbox exercise. You need to learn what it is. And to that end, we've been giving them some insights into the literature and the research around this. And I should say as well that before I go on to this next slide, that I'm just one member of this team here. My colleague, Professor Mark Brown, who can't be here today, is leading this. And my other colleague, Dr. Prajakta Gurme Lily, is working on this too in the team in DCU in partnership with QAAs, who are leading the consultation. So one of the questions we asked about the sessions, to give you an idea, this is one of the things we asked: what would you like to hear about the session? And I've just colored in, roughly coded some of these in different colors here to give you a flavor for the things that people are looking to get out of these sessions as they arrived. And you can see the blue here, there's people, very internationalization. And this is particularly leaders in institutions are thinking about internationalization. You can see the purple one here, and this come back to Anna Gover talked about this, about the evolving terminology. There's a lot of, I guess, confusion and a lot of, we're struggling with the terminology, that blended intensive programs or clarity on definitions, synchronous, asynchronous, hybrid, fully online. There's a big sea of a definitional soup going on. So we tried to give some insight into currently accepted definitions from different organizations and bodies in this space. The orange there is, you can see a couple of words: tolerance for variability, how rigid will they be, straightforward, how best to adapt. And this kind of gets at some of the tensions in quality guidelines between giving people structure and giving them principles. And last one there on the green is just about engaging students and how do we support learners, and really zooming down to make sure that the learner experience does not get lost. And these ones are a few from the learning technologist session that I just pulled out to give you a flavor of what they look like. And they're talking about assessment, examples, technology, learning from others, and a shared experience, VLE, policies, clarity of purpose, the meaning of life, the universe and everything. I think there was a sci-fi fan that contributed that one. So we asked people as well then, what was kind of, if they could sum up in a single word, what was the most important quality consideration they had? And they said things like accessibility, definition, consistency, these type of things were coming up. Support, clarity, resources. Convergence is another thing that our speakers mentioned in previously. And just move my Zoom videos for a second. Assessment, clear definitions, integrity, accessibility came up as a big one in a very huge evolutions in accessibility, and things like digital rights management as well was another big one, and privacy, that are rapidly evolving in law. We also asked people about their clarity. This comes back to this one about the definition. How clear are you about the differences between the terms blended and online learning? And I haven't got which cohorts these are, perhaps to protect the guilty and the innocent. But we asked them to give a rating out of 5. We gave them some questions. There was a mix of breakout rooms and workshops where they discussed different aspects of quality, and we gave them polls and things as well, using VBox, a very nice function where you just do a star rating. And very different responses between some of the groups about the differences between blended and online learning. As you can see, some people had a lot of clarity in this and some people didn't. How familiar are you with the quality assurance literature related to blended and online learning? We tried to give people some insights into some of the expertise that our panel, for example, embodied today, to give them insight into things, but also to question how familiar they were with them. And give people a sense that there's a lot of research going on outside of Ireland, and they're connected up to all these other we don't need to reinvent the wheel, we need to learn from each other. And then we asked them about their own knowledge of the guidelines, which by law, Irish providers are required to, everyone on these calls was supposed to have knowledge of them, but we got them to reflect on their own knowledge of the current guidelines, because I think, as some of our panelists mentioned, we need to have cognizance of existing basic quality guidelines for all programs before we even get to online ones. And my final reflection, or something to say to you with, is my own reflection on this, is that we talk a lot about quality cultures, and I guess a quality culture is an ongoing conversation, and that's I think what we're doing today. And it's been very nice to talk to you today and be part of the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Simon. Thank you very much for these very interesting comments and reflections, and to show to us and to share with us these comments and the results of the different surveys to these professors. Very, very interesting ones. And now it's time for the last speaker today. But before that, I would like to remember that if you have questions, please, you can write your questions on the chat, or in the in the questions and answers platform here in the Zoom. And now let me introduce you Albert Bassart. Albert his degree is in information science at the University of Barcelona, and he's working at the ACU Catalonia. It's the Catalan University Quality Assurance Agency since 2004. And he's a project manager there, and he's now the secretary of the Evaluation Committee for Social Sciences and Law, and coordinator of the evaluation program for the validation of recognized degrees in Catalonia. Albert, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Josep Maria, for inviting us to this interesting seminar and this interesting week that you're conducting. Please, are you seeing properly the presentation? Okay. So we will start. I will try to provide you with the perspective of an assurance quality agency about all these issues that my colleagues commented. Well, here the important thing is that I represent ACU Catalonia, the Catalan University Quality Assurance Agency, based in Barcelona. And Catalonia is, you know, this region here. We have in our Catalan university system 12 universities, 7 public, 5 private. What is important here today is that we have 11 traditional presential face-to-face universities and 1 which is online, fully online, which is Open University of Catalonia, WOC. And well, some measures of our system. We as agency, which is accredited by ENQA, we as it was explained before, we conduct program and institutional reviews, also institutional reviews from learning providers of faculties and departments. Also, we have other functions like the quality assurance of teaching staff, the research, and also have an department of knowledge generation. But today, what we will put the focus is on the program and institutional assessment. We conduct several programs of evaluation, which are the ones you can see here: ex-ante accreditation, monitoring, accreditation of programs, and at institutional level, again, institutional accreditation, audits of the internal quality assurance systems, etc. For conducting these evaluations, I will go very quickly here because it was presented by Anna in the previous presentation of ENQA. We follow the standards and guidelines, European standards and guidelines. And our methodologies are based on these 10 standards from the ESG that I think are quite well known by all of you. So taking into consideration these European standards and guidelines, we in the agency develop our own methodologies for each of these programs of evaluation, projects of evaluation that I mentioned, ex-ante accreditation, monitoring, accreditation, etc. And to support these methodologies, we are developing other documents that, as I said, support in different aspects these methodologies. The first is a series of documents called Focus. The first one was about how to write and implement learning outcomes, and there are others. This is important because later on I will explain one of these documents that we are developing to support the evaluation of online and blended programs. One important thing here, it was said before by Anna Gover, is that our methodologies apply to all kinds of degrees, face-to-face programs from traditional universities, to blended programs from traditional universities, to fully online programs from our online university. Also, we can add here fully online programs from traditional universities. We also have that kind of programs, mainly master programs. And we apply exactly the same methodologies to all these kind of programs. This is important. As you all know, I will be very quickly here also. During the period of pandemic, the universities had to face technological and pedagogical, very important technological and pedagogical challenges. They demonstrated the capacity to have a quick reaction, adaptability. It was a big effort from them to comply with all the regulations, all the assessment and certifications needed, the internships, etc. It was a very stressful moment for them. We think that the reaction was very good, but of course it emerged the evidence that more work had to be done in terms of have an institutional strategy for providing online, digital, etc. Education. They had to work a little bit more, or much more, in educational model for e-learning if our universities want to do this transformation, this step to digital education, and other things, professional development and training of teaching staff, for instance, the use of digital education resources, etc. So in this moment, in which we are observing that many of our traditional universities are transforming their studies, or part of their studies into digital education, we thought that it was important to have document support, a document that supports our methodology, that provide guidelines on online and blended programs for the design of these programs, for the delivery of these programs, and also for us, for the agencies, for the evaluation of these programs. So our document Focus number 3 is it's not published yet. It will be published in few weeks, but it has this aim. This document, of course, we did this document. We are doing this document taking into consideration our experience evaluating online programs in our universities. Also taking into consideration resources like, mainly, for instance, the document that Anna Gover presented before, considerations for e-learning of ENQA, and also with the expertise of people that know this field. And in this case, our moderator today, Josep Maria Duarte, had an important role here in the development of this paper. Okay. The aim is, as I said, provide guidelines to support the process of transforming degrees towards the new modes of delivery. So it's for higher education institutions, for those who are responsible of the governance and the strategy of the universities, and also schools, for instructional designers, for those who are coordinating programs, master programs, degrees, bachelor degrees, etc., and also for the stakeholders. But at the same time, these guidelines have to be useful for our evaluation commissions, accreditation committees, etc. We observe that our commissions need extra orientation, extra guideline when they had to evaluate or accreditate programs that were delivered in blended mode or online, etc. Okay, this is the structure of the document. I'm not know if okay in a minute. The document has this structure, introduction, not one first part of modes of delivery, where we provide some definitions of what we understand for face-to-face, online, blended learning. Here in Spain, at a legal level, we have some strict regulation of what does face-to-face program means, with a percentage of face-to-face hours, etc. We try to avoid these kind of definitions because, as it was said before in this seminar, the borders between what is one mode and another mode is blurring, as Anna said. So we try to avoid and try to make a definition more general, and try to say in this first part of the document that this transformation is going deeper and deeper every day. So try to put strict definitions here is very difficult. So it's better to avoid that. And then in this part of guidelines, we structured not exactly with our standards, but similar to our standards, as you can see in the most of these items that you can see here. And I would say that there are some of these guidelines that, as we said, are have the intention to be taken by the ones who are governing or governing our universities, citational strategy and policies, internal quality assurance systems, also justification or relevance of what is done. In terms of, we cannot, I would say, accept that a new program, online program, could appear in one university that doesn't have some strategy and policies for online learning, that don't have adapted their internal quality assurance systems to that kind of delivery, and that is not justified. I mean, justification means of why you are putting in a new blended or online program. Is it because you have foreign students or a profile of students that need that, or is it better for your discipline, etc. So we need strong justifications here. Then the central part is, as you can see, what the coordinators of our programs have to take into account in terms of have to define your activities, learning activities, teaching activities, the assessment systems, taking into account that the learning outcomes and the multi delivery have to align with all of this. So we provide guidance here. And then the last part is like requirements that they have to take into account based in what kind of learning resources they have to do and what characteristics have to have these learning resources, how must be the studying support, teaching support also, then the development of teaching staff, and of course, IT infrastructure and public information. I mean, IT infrastructure in terms of what some things that it was said previously in this seminar: security, integrity, etc., etc. And then academic results, how to measure the delivery, how to measure the performance of the titulation of the program, etc. So 10 minutes. It was a little bit all I wanted to present here, and of course we are disposed for your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Albert. Thank you very much. I think we have very interesting opportunities today because, as Anna mentioned at the beginning, we have two spoilers. No, the first one is this document from ENQAAHE, and now this one from ACU Catalonia, not? And also ENQA is rethinking about to renew some of the guidelines launched in 2018. But yes, of course, some people ask here if this document made by ACU Catalonia will be available in English. I reply saying that yes, it will be able in English soon, and as soon as it will be launched and published on the website, we will try to disseminate also, of course, to all of the people interested in this document. Now it's time for questions and comments. I saw some ones on the chat. I think the first one here is from Irina in Lithuania. Could you please, I think this is addressed to Anna Prades, could you please highlight the major changes in requirements or special requirements in new document with the comparison with the older versions? That means it's what's new, no? What kind of new things will be introduced in this in the document?
Okay, let's check for a moment. I have to check a little bit. The main changes regarding the global guidelines of good practice and international standards and guidelines are mainly this modular approach and these new modules. And maybe there is another question that refers, I think, about one of these modules that would link to it, right? There is a strengthened link between quality assurance and recognition, which is a major issue that has been coming in this year with the Global Recognition Convention and so on. And there are new dimensions of evaluation, relevance, measuring outcomes. It's more focused, more outcomes oriented. Recognition, as I said, integrity, and also some talk about education core values.
Sorry.
Okay, that's that would be the major advancement. There's a question in the question and answer box regarding the partnerships. What happens when a program is delivered by two higher education institutions? I think that's something like that. And if we have considered this reality, yeah. See, yes, if we have considered the quality assurance issue around international partnerships, and I would like to say that this is a really important question because international partnerships are more and more important nowadays, and we do need to tackle this issue. And in fact, one of the additional voluntary modules of the international standards and guidelines has to do with the quality assurance for cross-border education, which would be this. And the structure and the logic of this module is the same as the one we have just seen. It has to be in the mandate. There must be policies and policies, relevant policies, and then there must be relevant standards. And in these relevant standards, again, equivalency of provision is key, and recognition is the other aspect really important. You must be able to ensure that there is recognition of the learning provided. But this is really a major issue, and we saw it in last ENQA General Conference also, the last one in Stockholm. This is a very, very important question because it's more and more common and more in these online and blended programs. It's much more easier to do this kind of partnerships. So it's a thing that we have to be able to tackle.
Thank you very much, Anna. Yes, I think I have another question. So you have time also to write your questions. I insist on the chat note, but I took some notes during your presentations, and I try to summarize with 4 key words, not for me important in this moment. Not one, it's related to e-assessment, not everything related to the assessment, because and in particular e-assessment. When the traditional or face-to-face university started to work with this new kind of modalities, which for them, which is online courses or blended courses, I'm sure that is one of the most important things to take care about quality, because usually the assessment process, learning assessment process for the students is something very traditional, not in the face-to-face universities. And I'd like to know your experience as quality assurance agencies in order to offer guidelines or to see what is happening in this moment related to the e-assessment, in particular in the face-to-face universities when they are starting providing online or blended courses. I don't know if Anna Grove or Imon or Albert.
Yeah, where to start? Well, I don't have any concrete answers, but I think what's important to say is that it's the responsibility of the higher education institution to have a assessment approaches that they are confident that are appropriate and aligned with the course content and the course delivery, and that properly assess whether the student is meeting the learning outcomes, but also that they're confident that the assessment approach is secure. And we see a lot of questions around that. There are a lot of programs out there. There are a lot of different approaches out there. I'm not going to advertise one over another, but I think the key issue is around the alignment between sort of constructive alignment between the teaching and learning methods and the assessment methods.
Yeah, thank you. Now, another key word that I noted here is related to the learning experience. I think you were Imon who mentioned this, and I'm sure that it's a big difference, in particular for the students, students in the higher education systems, related to before and after pandemic, in particular related to the learning experience. Many of these young students have their first experience online during the pandemic, and I think that this experience is important to take care when we try to implement these new courses, in particular also in face-to-face universities using hybrid or online models. You mentioned that in your speech, Imon. Do you like to explain a little bit more about everything this related to the learning experience?
Well, it's a huge. The learner experience is vast, but there was a report in Ireland today, a big student survey of all our national student survey, and one of the things that came through clearly in that was student mental health. And there was recent research conducted by Stephanie Moore and George Valencianos, and another author, who in their research they said that the mental health of online students is not any worse than that of on-campus students, which is interesting. It's because there's some narrative that online is contributing to mental health issues. But to come back to kind of the earlier thing on assessment, and if we're making assessment secure and so on, there are trade-offs between putting huge pressure and stress on students, and how do we help manage that to make sure their experience is enough. We give them enough structure, but we don't create too much pressure for them in terms of e-assessment. And I thought it was interesting what Anna was saying about the assessment, and it's a huge topic as well. AI in assessment is a very big thing coming through, the ability of AI to write essays, to correct essays, and the future this will have as well will be interesting to see play out.
Thank you, Raymond. And also all of you mentioned many times, not everything related to the policy and the position of the institution, not related to this. When an institution decides to provide or to offer a course on blended or an online system, I think it's important to be sure not that this is assumed as a strategy from the institution. I have experience also as an evaluator that so many traditional universities in this moment use their experience during the pandemic as that's something that is enough not to provide this kind of courses. And I would like to know from you, Albert, that I'm sure that you have also experience here in Catalonia about that. What is the the situation related from the quality agency? No, is this something that it's important from the quality agency to take care of the position of the organization in order to deliver this kind of online or blended courses?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the main reasons to make this document, I would say, or this guide, provide these guidelines, is to send this message that you are saying. Let's see. In a way, maybe all these guidelines are not necessary. Part of them, yes, but not all. For a university, that has the online or digital education in their mission, like, for instance, let's say our Open University in Catalonia, because of course, as is in their strategy, all the policies, all the resources are oriented to this kind of delivery. But it's not, that don't happen in the other universities. So what we want to not avoid, it is very difficult, but you can see when you evaluate a program, you can see very quickly when an online program, when the managers, when the resources, when also the teaching staff and the students are aligned with among all of them in a strategy that justifies that this degree is delivered online or blended because that and that and that. And when a peer or a program, an online program where not the people have a clear idea of why this is online or not, why the resources are under construction. We will have a platform. We will have we will do that. We will do that. So it's very clear when you read or when you evaluate or you assess or when you chat with the stakeholders, etc. So what we want to send is the clear message. Is something that goes from top to down. If the strategy is clear, the resources will be put in, and there will be a planification of what is needed, how you will articulate the support to the teachers, to the students, etc., many things. So yes, I think this is one of the main messages that we wanted to send.
Thank you very much, Albert. Now we have a new question. It's more or less the same that I was thinking now, and we have a few minutes just to finish this webinar. But I would like to ask to all of you maybe to summarize or to say some highlights, not about your presentations, but focusing one idea that also Caterina Salvador is asking to all of us. Is really the pandemic changed the situation, the views from the quality agencies and also the higher education institutions, students, employers, And if that happens, that I suppose the answer is yes, which is the position from your organizations or also the quality agency, the quality assurance agencies. Maybe 1 or 2 minutes for each one, if you would like to start, Anna Grove, for instance, from Europe.
Thank you. Yes. I mean, yes, I think clearly the pandemic has changed the views and the acceptance. But I would reiterate a couple of points. One is that in some countries it depends very much on as I said, on the legal framework and the recognition of degrees delivered in different ways works differently in depending on the delivery mode in some countries. I think the other comment I'd like to make, and this just sort of final comment from me, and this sort of comes back to one of your earlier questions about the learning experience, but then ties into the questions also around the sort of strategic intent of the institutions. We again need to remember the difference between the online education provision that took place during the pandemic, which was an emergency response to a crisis situation. And clearly that was not going to replicate the student experience that those students had signed up for. They had signed up to go to university and have that whole package. Whereas students that sign up for an online course, an online program, in normal circumstances do so knowing very well that that's what they've signed up for, and their expectations then towards the student experience may be very different. Their needs also may be very different. Now, that doesn't mean that an institution can forget about all the sort of peripheral aspect of the student experience. It's obviously still vital that the student support is there, that issues around access to the resources and support for students with particular needs still need to be in place, but the expectations from the students may be very different. And I think there's, you know, also an important role for institutions to play in terms of information provision, so that students know what they're signing up for when they register for an online course, be that a small module or a whole degree program. But that from a strategic perspective is very different to the situation we found ourselves in early 2000, where clearly, you know, there was no way that the usual student experience was going to be replicated in an online manner.
Thank you very much. Imon?
Online learning is learning, and building quality cultures is an ongoing conversation, and I'm very grateful to have learned so much from you all today.
Yeah, thank you very much, Imon. Very clear. Albert?
Yes, very quickly, I want to express one worry that I think we have as an quality assurance agency. We want to provide guidance, we want to help in this process of transforming. And here there is a balance. We don't want to be a barrier for new perspectives, for new ideas, for new modes of delivery, etc. So this is not an easy balance. We have to be very careful here. And that's the idea that I wanted to express to conclude.
Thank you very much, Albert. And it's very interesting to know that the quality agencies don't want to be a barrier. This is very important. And of course, it's the way that the quality agencies have to work in that sense. Okay. Anna, please finish.
Yeah, well, I would say that online learning is learning. And the quality assurance of the provision, the quality assurance of the provision should fit any kind of provision. The thing is that the pandemic changed things, and in this huge diversity of the world, it changed things everywhere, absolutely everywhere. So there was this debate in INQAAHE do we need really standards for e-learning and blended programs or not, because they are covered already in the baseline standards. And we thought, yes, because in this transition where everybody had to change, there has been practice. More and more institutions are more open, and countries that previously were absolutely, it was prohibited, this kind of education, now it's feasible, and it was a demand, and there is an international demand about how to ensure this quality of e-learning and blended provision. So at the moment it's necessary, but I would say that in the future, the lines are going to blur so much that it's not going to be necessary. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Anna. And I think this is a very interesting conclusion for all of us, and in particular, this idea that digital learning is learning or online learning is learning. Okay, thank you very much to all of you, to all of the speaker presenters today. Of course, thank you very much to all of the attendants to this meeting. This webinar from Eden. We are so happy to have a lot of people following this European Open and Distance Learning Week. And I would like to announce that tomorrow we will continue to Thursday at 11 with another webinar. The title of the webinar is Quality of Digital Education from Teachers' Perspective. Today we had the opportunity to see from the quality agencies, and tomorrow it's the day to see this perspective from teachers. Thank you very much, and see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.